the Kalam cosmological argument for non-nerds. Now, I'm a big fan of arguments for the existence of God, such as the Kalam, the ontological argument, the argument for contingency, fine-tuning, moral, this, that, and the third. However, usually when I watch guide videos, and I like these videos, okay, but the guy presenting it usually sounds like a geek. And I understand that a lot of people don't like listening to people who sound like geeks. So, I will attempt to do this in a cool way. That doesn't sound like it's being told by a nerd. However, as a nerd at heart, this may not be successful. But no, it will be. I'm the guy. I'm the man. Anyways, so terms, deductive reasoning. If the premises are true, then the conclusion is logically unavoidable. So, premise one, all men are moral. Premise two, Socrates is a man. Conclusion, therefore, Socrates is moral. Now, in order to impugn a deductive argument, you have to argue about the premises. You can't argue about the conclusion and assuming it follows the rules of logic. So there's your term. So this is the argument, the Kalam cosmological argument. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Now, in an attempt to identify this cause, we can use this argument. If the universe has a cause, then an uncaused, personal creator of the universe exists who sans without. See, that's where the nerd territory comes in, because you have to use the word sans or without. Because if you don't, then you come into issues with before, because before time, you don't care. Okay, just use the word sans or without. The universe is beginningless, changeless, immaterial, timeless, spaceless, and enormously powerful. Therefore, an uncaused personal creator of the universe exists who sans the universe is beginningless. You don't care about the rest. You can read it. So in any case, this is the argument. This leaves us with God. This personal creator fits the definition of God. So both of these are valid arguments. We just have to validate the premises, and then we'll come to a conclusion, or see if the conclusion's valid based on the premises. So, premise number one, whatever begins to exist has a cause. Now, if you look in front of you, you're probably watching this on a desk. There's a bunch of things on your desk, all right, or on your wall, wherever you are, in front of you. Look at them. I have a screwdriver right here. Don't ask me why. This began to exist. This hasn't existed for eternity. It began to exist. So, it would be ridiculous for me to not then say, well, this screwdriver has no cause for existence. It came by nothing from nothing. It's just a screwdriver. It just showed up without a cause. No one made it. There's no company that made it. No factory. No nothing. That's ridiculous. Or you get this. I just dropped something. A tape measure began to exist. It would be ridiculous to say, well, you know, it just popped into being out of nothing. No cause, from nothing by nothing. It just showed up one day. And you just do this with all the things on your desk or in front of you, and you realize it'd be absurd to say any of these things just came into being out of nothing. It has a cause for its existence. Now, when we go with this logic, they do reductio ad absurdum, which is when you follow someone's logic or the logic of something to show that it's ridiculous. So, imagine if things began to exist without causes. Imagine that. You go outside, just, I don't know, drinking some water, whatever the hell you do. Whatever the hell you want to do outside. And two dudes making out just show up right in front of you. Imagine how awful that would be. That would ruin my day. That would sincerely ruin my day. Thankfully, it doesn't happen. They don't just, oh, they're there. Without a cause, oops, they're just there. Or you don't go into the bathroom and your great-grandma doesn't just spawn right in front of you while you're taking a piss. I mean, imagine how awful that would, oh my god. But in any case, the point is that things don't just come into being out of nothing. It's not like the world isn't full of this magic stuff like, poof, a unicorn's there. Bet you didn't expect that. Or some, like, Michael Myers doesn't just spawn right behind me. It doesn't happen. So, premise one is more plausible than not. Next, the universe began to exist. Now, we're into nerd territory. Okay, I'm going to make this as simple as possible. Because we have nerds like Lawrence Krauss over there. Although he does support this premise where he's like, well, you know, the quantum vacuum and all the particles, they actually begin to exist from nothing. It's like, bro, sound like a geek. But in any case, we can quote top cosmologists such as Alexander Vilenkin, who said, yeah, the universe began to exist. Lawrence Krauss, nerd, who is very skeptical of God's existence, believes the universe, or most likely, he likes using words like that, began to exist. The Big Bang Theory, scientific consensus now, accepts the Big Bang Theory, and the Big Bang Theory does posit a beginning of the universe. Now, there's also philosophical issues with an eternal universe. So, I forgot to get the video prepared. Hold on. Alright, so this is William Lane Craig explaining Hilbert's Hotel. You'll see how this relates. And by the way, the formulation of the argument I use is from him. William Lane Craig's a G.
David Hilbert was perhaps the greatest mathematician of the 20th century. And to illustrate the strange nature of the actual infinite, he invites us to imagine a hotel that has an infinite number of rooms in it. Moreover, he says, imagine that every room is occupied. Now, you have to have that firmly in mind. There is a flesh and blood person in every single room throughout the infinite hotel. Now, Hilbert says, suppose somebody shows up at the guest registry wanting to check in. The proprietor says, of course, no problem. And he moves the person who was in room 1 into room 2. The person who was in room 2, he puts in room 3. The person who was in room 3, he puts in room 4, on out to infinity. As a result, room 1 now becomes vacant, and the new person is easily accommodated. And yet, before he came, all the rooms were already full. Then Hilbert says, imagine that an infinite number of new guests show up at the front desk, and again, every room is already occupied. No problem, says the manager. And he moves the guest in room 1 into room 2. He moves the guest who was in room 2 into room 4. He takes the guest who was in room 3 and puts him in room 6, putting every guest in the room number double his own. Well, since any number multiplied by 2 is always an even number, right? All of the odd-numbered rooms become vacant, and therefore the infinity of new guests is easily accommodated. And yet before they arrived, every room was already full. I think these sorts of absurdities show the impossibility of the existence of an actually infinite number of things, because there's nothing about the illustration that hangs on it being a hotel. When you have an actual infinite, you generate these kinds of crazy situations that I think are plausibly metaphysically impossible.